There's a truly devastating deception unfolding in Kenya. Young men are being promised these fantastic, well-paying jobs in Russia, only to completely vanish. But they're not ending up on construction sites or at security posts. No, they're being sent directly to the front lines of the war in Ukraine. Their hopes for a better life have been twisted into a desperate fight for survival. And if you go back home to villages all across Kenya, you can feel this quiet tragedy unfolding. The evidence of their absence is just everywhere. It's in the empty beds they used to sleep in, the empty chairs at the dinner table, and, that chilling silence when you call a phone that never, ever gets answered. The families are just left waiting and praying and begging for some kind of help. This one sentence, it really captures the horrifying stakes here. We're not talking about lost jobs. We're talking about lost lives. These are young men being treated as completely disposable in a war that has absolutely nothing to do with them. To really understand the true cost of this whole scheme, you have to look past the statistics and see the men behind the numbers. These aren't just names on a list. They were sons and husbands and fathers. Each one had their own skills, and each one had a dream of providing a better life for their family. This right here shows you just how cruel and precise the deception was. I mean, take Ruben Dongo, 29 years old. He's an experienced driver, so they promised him a security guard job. Makes sense, right? Or James Kamau, a father who loved to cook, was told he'd be working as a cook in the military barracks. Then there's Evan Skabet, an athlete who believed he was going over for a cultural exchange. You see? Every promise was perfectly tailored to their skills to make it sound completely legitimate. But the reality for all of them was exactly the same: the front lines. So how in the world does a hopeful journey for a better life turn into a one-way ticket to a war zone? Well, the whole thing is systematic, and the deception kicks in the second they land in Russia. This timeline just shows you how fast it all happens. A recruit arrives, he's full of optimism. Just a couple of days later, they're shoving papers in his face for a so-called work permit. For Evan Skibet, the athlete, that moment of truth came on a bus. After driving for hours, the bus just suddenly veered off the highway, deep into the wilderness, and pulled up to a military camp. That's when he knew. The promise was a complete lie. And this is the crucial moment. They're handed these official-looking documents, but here's the catch. It's all in Russian. They have absolutely no idea what they're signing. They think it's for a work permit, maybe a visa extension. So in that single moment, without understanding a word, they sealed their own fate. They weren't signing up for a job in some factory. They were signing a contract with the Russian military. So with their signatures on a contract they couldn't even read, the bait and switch was complete. And the horrifying reality of their new lives was just about to begin. In a chilling phone call he managed to make home, Ruben Dongo told his family that the Africans were being used as a buffer zone. Now, this wasn't some standard military term for them, no. It meant they were being put on the absolute front lines, used as human shields to absorb the first wave of attacks, all to protect the more experienced Russian fighters behind them. And what if they hesitated? What if they figured out the trap and refused to fight? Well, they were given an impossible choice. As one survivor put it, they told me either you go to war or you will be killed. It's an ultimatum with only one possible outcome. And this experience is echoed by another recruit who survived, John Garrow. He confirms it. The men are constantly coerced, constantly threatened. The choice to fight isn't a choice at all. It's an order, backed by the threat of being thrown in jail or just being executed on the spot. The hell they were thrown into it's just hard to even comprehend. They had less than 2 weeks of training, and they couldn't understand a word their Russian-speaking commanders were saying. One survivor, John Jarrow, described being forced to walk through rivers that were literally filled with bodies. Their documents were taken away, and then, in one last, heartbreaking act of cruelty, their phones were confiscated after one final call home, severing their only link to their families. For James Kamal, that last call was to tell his wife they were at war and to pray. And then, just silence. So, who is behind all this? This isn't just random. It's an organized pipeline, a predatory system that's designed from the ground up to exploit desperation and hope. Okay, so the process starts with these rogue agencies in Kenya. They specifically target men who've already worked abroad, because that means they have passports and clean health records. Then they dangle these incredible offers of high-paying jobs, sometimes even trafficking them through neighboring countries to cover their tracks. And once the men are gone, the agents just vanish. Their phones are disconnected, their offices are empty, they're ghosts. For the families who are left behind, the fight is really just beginning. But as they search for answers, they're met with a total wall of silence and official inaction. According to the Kenyan government's own estimate, at least 200 Kenyans are believed to be fighting for Russia right now. But let's be honest, that number is almost certainly a very conservative estimate. Given how secretive these recruitment networks are, the true scale of this problem is likely far, far greater. The families are just caught in this bureaucratic nightmare. I mean, can you imagine? Ruben Dongo's mother went to the Russian embassy and they flat out denied ever processing his visa, and then they threw her out. The Kenyan authorities say they know about the cases, but that it'll take time. The government has issued warnings, but for these families, it's way too little, way too late. And the agents, of course, are long gone. The Ukrainian embassy in Kenya has put out its own stark warning, basically confirming everything the families already know. Their message is clear. Russia is desperate for fighters, and as soon as you cross that border, you're at risk of being lured and forced into their army. And, in their words, there are not much ways of getting out. Ultimately, this whole story just comes back to the human cost. For these men and for their families, a future has been stolen from them, and it's been replaced by this unimaginable pain and uncertainty, all for a war that has nothing to do with them. This is the voice of James Camo's wife. Her plea is so simple, and it's just heartbreaking. This isn't about geopolitics or money. It's about a young woman who just wants her husband back and a daughter who needs her father. And then you hear the words of a survivor, Evan Skibbett, and it just captures the dual reality of this nightmare. There's the incredible relief that he's alive, but it's immediately followed by this desperate desire to get back to his daughter. His story is this rare glimmer of hope, but it also just highlights the deep, painful longing of every single man who is still trapped over there. So we're left with this lingering, massive question. For the men who are still missing, for the families who are just stuck in limbo, and for the survivors who are going to carry these scars forever, who is ultimately going to be held accountable for their stolen lives, their absence, and the deafening silence that surrounds their fate?